Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to meet one of the special people in Milford. I mean, so many people have opinions, want to tell you what to do, want to tell you how to make things better, but they won't get up and help. There's a very select group of people who will stand up and say, I think I can help make it better, and I'm willing to invest my own time to do it. Tonight, we're going to talk to somebody who's looking to guide the Milford Town Meeting as the moderator. So, Mike, why don't we start with an introduction?
Thanks, Al. I appreciate you having me on your show. It's some kind words you said. I'm not, I like to hear them, but then again, I'm not used to hearing them, so to speak. But my name is Mike Bontempo. Legally it's Michelangelo Bontempo, but everybody calls me Mike. And I'm running for the position of town moderator. As most of you know, unfortunately, back in September, our longtime moderator, Attorney Michael Nofri, passed away, and the position is now open. And the reason I'm running is there are a couple of reasons. First of all, my life over the last 20 years has pretty much been devoted to Milford. Dedicated to civic involvement in the town. First of all, with the Friends of the Milford Town Library. Libraries have always been an important part of my life. And 20 years ago, Paul Curran invited me to join the Friends, and I did, and I've been on the board ever since. And I think that group has done a lot of work, on behalf of the library and on behalf of the patrons. To make it what it is today, which is really a fantastic library. Between the collections, the staff, the director, the trustees right now, there's really a fine group of people down there. And it's nice to be part of that over the last 20 years. The other thing is also 20 years ago, I became a town meeting member. And I think for the first I went to pretty much gone to every session since I became a town meeting member. That's 53 out of 56 sessions. So I took on, was elected, and I took on that role very seriously. That's your responsibility to go to these meetings and to participate. And the participation part for me, other than voting, took a long time. It wasn't until a few years ago that I really got actively involved and got up on town meeting floor and was part of the actual deliberations, which was kind of a daunting thing at first. And I think it still is a daunting thing to get up in front of the town meeting floor and speak what you feel from the heart. And I think I've done it, and I think I've done it well. But that's part of my involvement in the community and what I've done over the last 20 years. And really, when I think back about it over the last few weeks, my involvement in the community and giving back to it really started when I was in grade school. And I can remember being maybe third or fourth grade and joining the choir at Sacred Heart Elementary School. And one of the things we would do, and it wasn't just on Christmas season, it was throughout the course of the year, we would pay visits to the old Milford, what was it called? Nursing home up on the Silent Street before they built the Geriatric Authority. And we would also go to the old Clapham Hill Nursing Home, and we visit the patients there, and we'd sing. That was part of, civic involvement. And then I joined the, and also just from the Catholic perspective of visiting the sick and the homebound and that aspect of charity, giving of yourself. And then I can remember as a member of the Boy Scouts, one of the things we had to do was you had always Eagle Scout projects. As soon as you entered Boy Scouts, you had an Eagle Scout or a prospect for Eagle Scout who had to do a service project, giving back to the community. So as a Boy Scout, you were expected to help out with those Eagle Scout projects. So, and again, also I look at my family history, my family, the Davern side and the Casey side has been in this town since the 1850s. And starting a little bit over 100 years ago, my great-great-grandfather was highway surveyor. My grandfather was a school committeeman as well as a town meeting member. My mother still a town meeting member. My father was a library trustee. I have two brothers, one who was a trustee, one who's an incumbent for this race. I have another brother who's a town meeting member. He's also on the conservation committee. A fourth brother who's a town meeting member. So, growing up, that was part of the culture in our family, is you give back to the community. And, when this opportunity opened up, I don't want to say opportunity, that's not the right word, but when the situation occurred with my passing, and also my involvement over the last 5 years in two committees, one being the Town Meeting Studying Improvement Committee and its predecessor, the Town Meeting Working Group, looking at ways to improve committee. And one of my jobs was to take on developing a town meeting handbook, as well as a Milford town meeting procedural guide. I got more involved in the history and the customs of town meeting, how town meeting is run, looking at all kinds of manuals of procedures. And, I realized that, hey, I know how town meeting is run. I know how I can, with the help of the Town Meeting Studying Improvement Committee, make improvements to the way town meeting is run. So I decided, hey, it's time for me to, give it a shot.
Now, before we go to our first question, what troop of the Boy Scouts?
Troop 2, down at Sacred.
Right.
Had to be Troop 2. I mean, back then there was Troop 2 and there was Troop 18.
Yeah, I was Troop 2.
You were in Troop 2 too. Okay, so and I don't know who was the scoutmaster when you. I mean, we had Joe. We had Joe D'Antonio and Joe Capuzziello, but
Joe Cap was there, and Mr. Weber was there.
Okay.
To this day, I can't call him by his name. He's still Mr. Weber.
Oh, well, let's see. We had Mr. Coelho. Jimmy Coelho.
Yeah.
His father was also, one of the assistant scoutmasters. And I can remember Joe Capps, so the other civic thing we used to do, we used to have to, walk in every parade. And his line was, you better be there. And if you're not there, you better have your small intestines hanging out of you. That was it. That was part of the deal. You had to show your pride of being a Boy Scout and being involved in an organization and showing, taking part in those parades.
Well, I mean, when you look back and those people, Sr. Coelho, I mean, he worked with my father. God forbid you would never cross the line.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's in the car with your father, or Joe Cap would look at you.
Yep, absolutely.
It's like, I'm going to the parade. The uniform has to be washed and pressed.
Yep.
I know it's old school, but what would he say if I showed up with, a uniform that didn't show the pride we had?
Oh, well, you know what? If you had two scout manuals with him, you'd have those scout manuals in each hand, arms outstretched.
So now, Mike, we start off. I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I think some of the things I just said, and I think Jerry's a fine candidate. I just think, given some of the things that have happened over the last few years, with the COVID, with issues about remote participation, and what's occurred there, and making the town meeting run more efficiently. I've presented in my ads, and I hope we'll talk to them about them tonight. Some things to make a town meeting better. A better experience for the members, and hopefully for the general public, the registered voters of town, and hopefully that will inspire them to get involved.
Now, most people have no idea, so I'll ask you, what is a town moderator?
Well, a town moderator is the individual who has three primary functions when it comes to three primary duties, I should say, when it comes to town meeting. And those are, the individual has to preside and regulate the proceedings. The individual has to decide, the moderator has to decide all questions of order, and the moderator has to make public declarations of all votes. That's what's in the law. So that's what they do. They run the meeting, and as you know, each article comes up. They ask for each article to come up, and you know, a motion is given, and they open it up for discussion. And through recognizing the moderator allows you to speak about the issues, or to make amendments to the motion. And so that's what they do. They run the meeting. There's a set agenda. The agenda is what's in the warrant, the articles, and the job of the moderator is to make sure we get from Article 1 and we get down to Article whatever, and you know, we finish the business of the town.
Now,
I should say there are some things that the moderator has to do prior to the meeting that are important. It just doesn't show up, and you know, he should meet with you know, various town officials to make sure the meeting hall is set up correctly. The other thing the moderator has to do is make sure that they, through the Board of Selectmen or town administrator, make sure that there's a constable or a police officer available in case there's anything happens at the town meeting, in terms of you know, make sure the order is kept. The other thing that town moderator should do is be available to the registered voters of the town, and as well as the town meeting members, if they have any questions on procedural matters before town meeting, or if they want to present a motion. You know, the moderator is fair, should be fair and unbiased and neutral. So and the moderator doesn't want any surprises at town meeting. So you know, if a member wants to make an amendment to a motion, they should show it to the moderator and make sure that it's in proper order. It's, you know, it's worded correctly. It's within, quote unquote, what they call the scope of the article. You know, the boundaries, that it's not outside the box, so to speak. And you know, we want to make sure it's correct. And you know, so that's what the moderator principally does at town meeting. His role, or her role, excuse me.
Now, everybody thinks of a meeting being run always by Robert's Rules of Order 2.
Mm-hmm.
What rules is Milford's town meeting run under?
Well, unofficially, it is a handbook called, a book called Town Meeting Time, Handbook of Parliamentary Law, that was first published in early 60s, I believe, or late 50s, early 60s, by the Massachusetts Moderators Association. And it's gone through, they're into their third edition now. And you know, Mike became moderator in 1975 or 74, I believe. And that's how he's run town meeting. Now, since then, according to the precedents that you find in town meeting time, you know, an individual can open up, watch a town meeting and open up Robert's Rules of Order, and they're going to say, this isn't how town meeting is run. I mean, you can just go to Robert's Rules and look up, you know, the order of business. You know, the first thing is always, you know, approve the previous meeting minutes. Well, we don't approve the previous meeting minutes at town meeting. That's already set and done by, and town meeting members have no control over that. That's done by the town clerk by law. They're responsible for the minutes of the meeting, and you know, they publish it in the annual report, and that's it. It's done. We have no say in the matter. You know, there are other things. There's no old business to take care of. You know, you can't go to a previous town meeting that a motion, I mean, the warrant has been dissolved, and say, Mr. Moderator, I want to take up Article 5 from the special town meeting of last year. Doesn't happen.
I'd like to reconsider the article that is part of the dissolved warrant.
Yeah, you can't take up something that's been previously adopted. I mean, that's a motion in Robert's Rule to amend something previously adopted. You can't do that in town meeting. Anything that comes from a previous warrant, if you want to reconsider it, you're going to have to put another article into the motion, into the article. The other thing too is just the way, you know, again, how town meeting is, the initial way it goes. or is run before we get to the actual articles, that's all found in town meeting time, where it's, the reading of the warrant, the reading of the officer's return, the resolutions, the swearing in of new members. If we have the Pledge of Allegiance, or if we have somebody singing the national anthem, all those things are found in town meeting time. And when you look at previous town reports, and you look at the what we commonly call the meeting minutes, or the records of the town meetings, you don't see those things listed. It always goes, directly to Article 1. There's nothing about swearing in of new members. There's nothing about saying the Pledge of Allegiance. One of the few references I found about singing the national anthem of all things was back in the late 60s, maybe the early 70s, when Anthony Allegrezza was the town moderator. And somebody got up and made a motion before they got to Article 1 and asked Anthony to sing the national anthem. I haven't talked to his son Tony about it, but evidently he must have had a fine voice, and he started singing the national anthem, and everybody joined in with him. So I mean, the town meeting, again, the other thing too is there's a lot of similarities between Robert's rules and town meeting time, but the meeting has been run over the last 45 years by town meeting time, and there are some things in town meeting time that can be utilized to make town meeting more efficient. But by and large, I'm going to run the meeting the same way Mike Milford did. You're not going to see any real well, there will be some changes. Again, they're going to be for the better. And I think there were some things that the committee, this town meeting study improvement committee, we sent to Mike, especially the one that was utilized at the remote meeting, that I think Mike was seriously considering using, but we never got a final word from him, because he passed away.
Yeah, but some of the changes, there's been some really fundamental changes in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And
think about it, Mike. You don't see people walking up reading War and Peace anymore.
No, and that was, and again, that wasn't something that just came out of the blue. That was part of the survey that the town meeting town meeting working group did back in 2017, where we sent out that question: should we have some kind of limit or excuse me, not limit, but rules on debate in terms of time limits? And the overwhelming majority of town meeting members said yes. So we came up with some, and actually even before we came up with them, town meeting member would get up before some of the we got to Article 1 and would say, I move that we limit a speaker's time to 5 minutes. And anytime you have that kind of limitation put on debate, it requires a 2/3 majority. And each time it was done, 2/3 majority voted in favor of putting a time limit. So yeah, I mean, that's been a definite change, which I think has overall improved town meeting in that, again, people's attention spans, when you get on, past 5 minutes, it kind of wavers, you kind of ebbs, But the other thing too, I think
people that were on talking for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever, for an extended period of time, we'll say. But I think as the moderator, I know that there's that rule, but you also have to temper it, because you're going to have to remember, as a moderator, you're going to get people up there who don't speak rapidly, so to say, or quickly, and you may have a person who's getting up there for the first time and is very nervous. So you have to realize that, not only as a moderator, but I think the members have to realize that and take that into account, that let's not strictly enforce that, if they're a town meeting, that 3-minute rule. Let's give it a little bit of leeway here. So
I think most town meeting members, if you saw somebody going up of age,
yeah,
or of shyness, if we could call it, and they've not talked before.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to sit there and say, "Excuse me, it's 5.01 minutes."
Yeah.
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 I think it's only when people, I hate to say it, but got carried away.
Yeah.
And they had the right intention. They were passionate about what they were speaking of, but
Sure.
after half an hour, I'm ready. Even if I was ready to vote for it, I'm considering voting against it.
Yeah. Sometimes, the best intentions turn out to be your worst enemy, so to speak, in that situation. I understand people want to, give across their viewpoint. But again, a town meeting we have an agenda. We have some business to get done, and you want to get it done within a reasonable amount of time. People don't want to be there for multiple nights if you have a 40 article warrant. And, things were different. Looking back at the records in late 60s and 70s, when they had warrants with 120 articles sometime, or 100 articles. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that but have multiple sessions.
I don't think I've ever been in 100 article town meeting.
No, and I think a lot of it back then, in the late 60s and the early 70s, a lot of them were street acceptance articles. When the town was expanding, with new developments, and you look at them and it's just one street after another was an article, and that would take up a considerable amount of time.
But is there really a reason to debate whether you're going to accept a street?
Well, nowadays there isn't, but I'm sure 30, 40 years ago, when Milford was still a relatively rural community, I'm sure people weren't happy with a lot of the developments going up, and you're seeing the huge influx of people coming in.
Well, we still remember when they put in those rich developments at the end of Highland Street. All of a sudden you had people with those monstrous split level houses.
Yeah.
I grew up in 600, almost 700 square feet. Mm-hmm. You go to a friend's house that is looking at 1,300. It's like, oh my God, this is a palace.
Right. And nowadays you look at some of the other homes, and it's like, there's a big, even bigger discrepancy now. So
the whole Ridgewood area.
Yeah.
I remember going up Highland Street to see my friend Tommy Silva for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And right at the light for the school, it stopped.
Yep.
It was dirt road from there on out.
Yeah, well, my mother remembers when her sister Susan and George Marino moved up to 104 Highland Street. There was no town water up there. They had well water. They still have well water there. But she thought that was the boondocks.
It's amazing when you start, thinking about the waves.
Mm-hmm.
If we all grew up in the plain old ranches, or, the projects, how many people grew up in the Heights, Luby Ave, that area.
Yeah.
In came the splits, and oh my God, what are all these rich people?
Mm-hmm.
And then the colonials, and you couldn't imagine anything bigger than a 3,000 square foot colonial.
Mm-hmm. Times have changed for certain.
Now, we have certain things that I believe are unique to Milford. What do you think about the rule where you have to have unanimous consent to let somebody speak?
Okay, yeah, I mean that's in the in 1933, the legislature approved the act which established representative town meetings in the town of Milford, and in 34 it went on the referendum as a referendum question on the ballot, and then it was approved. In 1935, you had the first town election for moderator and town meeting members. So that's when you had the first town representative town meeting, and that was one of the rules in the act which established representative town meeting, was that if you weren't a member or a registered voter of the town, if you wanted to speak, you had to have unanimous consent of the body. That was the rule, and that was, I think, strictly enforced. In 1963, the then moderator, John F. Curran, wrote an article that was in the Milford Daily News about some of the rules about, it's called The Inside Story of Milford's Annual Town Meetings. And it's printed verbatim. And prior to his time, I never saw anywhere where somebody wanted to get up to speak and or even somebody who wasn't a unregistered voter wanted to speak. I never saw that. I haven't seen that in the town records. But starting with, I think, Mike Nofri, and it comes directly out of town meeting time. And the town meeting times gives a brief history of that whole issue about somebody who's not a unregistered voter speaking at town meeting. And the section is called Strangers. And part of it, the rationale goes back to 1640, when the Massachusetts Bay Colony had its first set of laws called the Body of Liberties. And one of them said that any free man or enslaved person can come before the general court and speak and air their grievances, or have the right to petition. So that was given to, what they meant by free men back then was, of course, a male who owned property and was a member of the Congregationalist Church. Okay, that was the quote unquote free man back then. And an enslaved person back then, 1640, I'm sure there were African Americans enslaved, but it also meant indentured servants too, as well. People who came over from England, didn't have property or money, and were enslaved to the property owner for a given amount of time, number of years, until they were able to get their freedom. So that was a law that said anybody can get up in the general court, air their grievances, and petition the court. I mean, that was a freedom that was accorded to everybody. And there was also a situation with the Puritans who were leery of strangers, only because Puritans were persecuted in England. And if anybody has watched a show like Wolf Hall or something like that, is well aware of the king had all kinds of spies. So that preventing people from speaking was also part of the norm, so to speak, because they were afraid of spies, especially in deliberations, something like at a town meeting. So if a stranger come, they really didn't want them to be there or to speak. So you had these competing interests. And the other thing with town meeting too is you have to realize a town meeting is a you have a captive audience, so to speak. So to let somebody in there to speak, I have a right as a member. I really don't want to hear you speak because I got nowhere to go. I have a job to do. Okay. The other thing too, a competing interest is that I think that this is what the notion that Mike had in mind when he adopted that procedure that you find in town meeting time, is that nobody has a monopoly on information. And so if again, and especially if somebody has something relevant to the subject, I think as a moderator, town meeting members should hear it. And so that's where that procedural kind of runaround or it is a runaround, to allow somebody to speak came into play. So again, if somebody objects, the moderator calls a recess, says to that person, you're free to leave the meeting floor. You can go outside, and not listen. And those people who want to listen can sit and listen. And when that person's done speaking, we'll have somebody call you back in, and then we'll go on to reconvene the meeting, and end the recess and get on with the business. I mean, so to me, it's kind of an elegant workaround. It's not a runaround; it's a workaround. That would be the correct phrase to that situation where, according to the law that was set up, the only people who can speak are registered voters and members. And if you're an unregistered voter, you need the permission of the unanimous consent of the body.
Yeah, the only downside I've seen is that we pay these consultants large amounts of money. And frankly, I'd like to hear directly from them, not somebody's interpretation of what they thought the guy or woman said.
Well, see, again, nobody has a monopoly on information, and you want to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I mean, I think that's the intent, Mike's intent, years ago, back in, when he started back in 74, 75, because I was talking to Tony Allegrezza, and he said his father followed Robert's rules. And I'm sure, based upon the article that John F. Curran wrote, and where he quotes exactly what's in our bylaws, so to speak. And he said also that his knowledge, the procedural rules I'm presenting in this article are pretty much the same that the prior moderator used too, who was John McLaughlin. So you had a continuation and McLaughlin was moderator for almost 30 years. John Curran was moderator for at least 25 years. So you had 55 years of that rule being imposed, so to speak. With if you weren't a registered voter and somebody didn't want to hear you, guess what? You're not speaking at town meeting.
Now, what can a town moderator do, or do they do anything, if people are getting up and being economical with the truth?
Well, economical with the truth. Well, I mean, again, that's something I don't think the moderator has any say over that. I mean, the moderator is, as long as you are speaking about the merits of the motion that's on the floor, you can pretty much say anything. If you want to lie, excuse me, what was that, economical with that euphemism, then I think it's incumbent upon another town meeting member to get up there and say, hey, here's an opposing viewpoint on that economies that the previous speaker used, so to speak.
Now, when people start drifting,
mm-hmm.
I mean, you could see Mike would try and steer him back on topic.
Yeah.
What tools do you have to do that except the big gavel?
Well, I think you would hear Mike every once in a while. He wouldn't use the big gavel. He would use the light tap of the gavel. You would hear that little tick, tick, tick. Or you just say, you turn to the speaker. Again, you can only speak with the leave of the moderator. The moderator, grants you permission to speak. And the moderator is well within their right, if somebody is trailing off, to get that person back on track and say, excuse me, Mr. or Mrs. I think we're straying a little bit from the subject at hand. Can you please, get back to the merits of the motion before us? I
always found it amazing when people would get up and talk about what they studied in college, and you're shaking your head saying, excuse me?
Yeah. And
then you'd hear the tick, tick, Mike kind of bring him back.
Yep. I mean, that was his way of doing it. Again, when you have turnover of town meeting members, some town meeting members might not pick up on that. So I think it's, in that situation, the other thing too, it's incumbent on the town moderator. I think one of the things to maybe improve a little bit town meeting is for the moderator to have, and I've seen it done in other towns, and it's one of the recommendations of the Mass Moderators Association, is that the moderator should have, and it should go into the mailing of the warrant, the packet of information, some of the procedural rules that are used at town meeting. So when you speak, speak to the merits. I think people need, some reminders, and the more they're reminded, the more they're going to adhere to the proper protocols at town meeting.
Mike, what do you think the role of individual town meeting members is?
Well, okay. Kind of a broad question. Okay. Now, the role of the town meeting member is I mean, you're an elected individual. I mean, so you're there to represent your quote unquote your constituency in your precinct. It's not like an open town meeting where if you're a registered voter, you can go. or if you can choose to go or not to go. You've been elected, so you have a responsibility to attend and to participate in the town meetings. And so it becomes incumbent upon you as a representative to familiarize yourself with the issues that are in the warrant. And some of them are as you well know, are not controversial. Some of them, end up being controversial or stir up some controversy, and some of them, come out of a lightning bolt out of the blue and become controversies. So I think, thinking about this, one of the things that people should do, and it's kind of tough given the time constraints, is to watch the various boards and committees and commissions and watch the videos that are produced. Like the finance committee. I mean, it's online. I mean, you can go to the town website, you can look at them. You can go to the Board of Selectmen meeting, you can watch those. I mean, it's kind of tough to pick out the nuggets of information. So I think one of the things that I'm going to propose to the Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee is maybe, and as part of the education program, is to look through the warrant and also using the pre-town meeting forum and find out what articles are of interest to the town meeting members, and get the snippets from the various videos of all these meetings and put them together in kind of a long, not too long, but a video that will show, so for example, there's an article on a zoning bylaw change. So you go to the planning board meetings and you take out the snippets where they discuss that, so people can look at it over the course of a few meetings, just those 5 or 10, 5-minute segments of when the planning board was discussing the issue related to that zoning bylaw. So they don't have to watch the whole meeting, but it's we can put it on the website and it's there. They can watch some of the FinCon deliberations on some of the issues, 5 or 10 minutes. So they don't have to watch the whole meeting, but at least they can watch little bits of information, and they can get a better understanding of the issues surrounding an article, and that makes them, I think, would make them better prepared. If they decide to get up to speak on an issue, they can speak to it in a better fashion. Or if they have questions, they can ask a question that about the situation.
How do you think town meeting members have done in the past?
I think, by and large, I think they've done extremely well in terms of debating the issues. I think the debate is done well at town meeting. I think what I said just previously, it's just a way to enhance it. That's all. But by and large, I think when people get up there, I think most of them are well prepared. And I think the discussions are good. They're intelligent. They're definitely compassionate about how they feel about the issues. So overall, I think town meeting is a good vehicle, still is a good vehicle, and it remains so for us to make the quality of life here for the residents better.
Well, I would challenge anybody to not feel proud about a group of people over the last decades that have resulted in Milford having a surplus every year.
Yep.
In not using profanity. I mean, we have not used that word 2.5 override exclusion.
Yeah. And a lot of part of that is due to the fine work that the finance committee does. And I think a lot of people forget, that the finance committee, to me, has always been an extension of the town meeting. I mean, that's what it was 100 years ago. The first order of business after the town moderator was elected by the registered voters was one of the first things that the town moderator did. He appointed a finance committee to develop a budget for the next year and report back to town meeting. I mean, and they've done that function extremely well over the last 100 years or so.
Well, you think about it, and I've always said that our job as a finance committee or in any of the administrative posts is so much easier in Milford than I see it in other towns, because most of the people are Milford people.
Yeah.
I mean, my family's been here 70 years. It doesn't compare to yours,
Well,
but we've been here a long time. And there's something about Milford. And when you have department heads, I mean, when we thought this past year we were going to get really slammed because of the pandemic and
yeah.
we had departments turning in 0% increases, raises not being given.
Mm-hmm.
But I never saw anybody standing at town meeting and screaming or getting in front of the media and complaining. I mean, that makes our job so much easier.
Yes, it does. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a credit to your work, and it's also a credit to the department heads too. That they understand, the situation with the taxpayers, and everybody hurting with the COVID, not only personally from the loss of loved ones, but also in terms of the work, their work, people losing jobs and whatnot. So, kudos to the town as a whole for pulling together and making, again, the quality of life here is good.
Well, and again, it comes down to when people have complained, and I hear all the time, this is wrong, this is wrong. I said, yep, Milford's so terrible. Tell me a town you'd swap with. Pick one town around us. Because if Milford is that bad, why wouldn't you swap and go live in any of the towns around us?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you think about the average house here is what, $5,000 a year in taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Still too much, but it's a lot less than anybody else.
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, historically, when you look at Massachusetts, even going back to colonial times, was always higher in taxes than anywhere else. I mean, it seems to be part of the way of how Massachusetts operates. And they do provide incredible services, for that money. I mean, there's definitely return on the taxes, on the money that.
Yeah, I don't know if too many towns will pick up my trash, my leaves, and everything else as part of my taxes.
Yeah, and the fine job that the fire department does, the police department does. I mean, those are all goes into the quality of life here. Now, there are individuals in this town that are hurting. Definitely. I mean, I think I just heard. I think it was at the school committee when they had that forum. There are 70 homeless children in Milford. I mean, that's kind of shocking to hear.
49% of the kids going to Milford schools, the high school especially, are on reduced lunch. The program
Mm-hmm.
for people who are economically stressed.
Yeah,
that's amazing to me.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution for that is right now.
But Mike, I'm proud of the fact that when the budgets come together, when we discuss them, people aren't forgetting that you got a lot of new people coming into town. They're doing well, they're making good salaries, and I'm excited for them. But they don't forget the people who built our town.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we're here are people like your mom and all the other people, my grandfather who came over, but too many of them are living on $1,500 a month, Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of something to be double aware of. I drink my coffee. I work hard, and I'm going to spend my $2 on my cup of coffee.
Right.
But before I spend your $2 on anything, I got to be double careful, because people, I don't know how they exist and live on just Social Security, but they do.
I guess that's part of the human condition, and I don't know what nobody knows. I don't think anybody knows what the solution is. I mean, that's just the way. I mean, I think we try our best. Go to church. It's been difficult going to church, but you go to church. You make your donations. That money is going to be put to good use to help the individuals who are in need.
Now, one of the things that came out of your committee was putting a 10 p.m. question on town meeting floor as to whether or not we should continue.
Right.
How do you think that's worked?
I think it's worked well. Again, the meeting is, when it comes 10 o'clock, people are starting to waver, so to speak. And God bless Mike Milford. I don't know at his age, over the last few years, I don't know how he was able to do that. Especially given the conditions up on that stage. I've heard, there's very little air circulation. It's hot up there, and he's standing the whole time for 3 hours, and he's still going. He was like the ever ready bunny, so to speak. But again, after 3 hours, I think, and you could see it. A lot of people starting to leave, and I think it came to a head. I think when there was a long discussion on one of the I forget which article it was.
Chickens.
Was it the chickens? Was that the one?
That town meeting amazed me. We blew through $100+ million in minutes.
Yeah. And
then an hour and 50 minutes later, we're still debating a chicken.
Right, but I think that was the meeting. That was the meeting where again. But when you look at when that, we've only had a couple of adjournments since then. But again, at 10 o'clock, a lot of people left, and somebody finally said, raised a question of a point of a quorum, and so we had to take a count, and there wasn't a quorum, so we had no option but to recess and for the next session. But again, it gives at least a pause to the meeting. Okay, there's a definite line there that says, okay, at 10 o'clock, in order to continue, we need a majority vote to continue. And so it gives, again, it's up to the majority of town meeting members. If they want to continue after 10 o'clock, they have the right. But at least it sets a pause button, so to speak. Okay, let's take the temperature of town meeting. Are you still aware? Are you still up and ready to go?
Still awake.
Or are you ready to call it a night and say, okay, we've had a controversial article. We spent an hour talking about it. My attention span is flagging. I'm getting tired. Let's adjourn to another night. That's all it is. And I think it's worked well. I mean, it worked well when we had the remote meeting. Come 10 o'clock, we were halfway through the warrant. Let's adjourn to the next night. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think if you're halfway through, it becomes an easy call.
Yeah.
It's just when you got 3 or 4.
Well, yeah. When you get articles, I think common sense prevails, and you call it a night. But I mean, I can remember some nights we're there till
11:30,
11:45. I mean, that gets a little ridiculous. That late at night.
The question always comes up from people, Mike. How is the warrant put together? Who decides when the chickens show up and when the easy articles come up?
That's up to the article. I mean, the warrant is put together legally by the Board of Selectmen. They're in charge of putting, inserting articles into the warrant, and they solicit them from the department heads, the various town committees and commissions and boards, and they're responsible for, quote unquote, devising the order. And I think over the years, that responsibility has gone from the selectmen putting together the order, and it's been turned over to the town council. And the town council is also responsible for writing the individual articles. the legal language, and he's also responsible for writing the motions for those articles that are presented by the town. Other articles can be submitted by registered voters. They can do so at the annual town meeting. I think all they need is 10 signatures, and for a special town meeting, I think they need 100. And then this registered voters have a right to petition themselves for a town meeting. I think you need 200 signatures to do that, and then that becomes that article or articles that are submitted by the citizens. That becomes the warrant for that special town meeting, and the selectmen cannot include any other articles in that type of warrant. So that's how the order is determined by the town council. I think the town council tries to mix it up. The first, especially for the annual town meeting, the first 4, 5, 6 articles have been set by precedent over the year. Article 1, you hear the reports. Article 2 is on salaried positions. Article 3 is on elected salaries of elected officials. Article 4 has always been the town budget. Then we have the annual recurring articles are all grouped together. That's a recent innovation.
Thank God for that.
Well, that's safe. And again, that was a recommendation by the town meeting improvement
committee came up with a great one.
That was a good, and again, that's something that town meeting cannot dictate. So that was something that we had to propose to the Board of Selectmen, and they decided to adopt it as part of their policy for putting together the warrant. And that's been a huge time saver, because that's what, 7, 8 articles,
almost 10 articles.
Yeah, so that was a big time saver.
I mean, you think about it. Some of the ones that we used to have to debate is, does the school get the potato chip money from their machines?
Yep. And does the Board of Selectmen, represent the town in any legal actions? I mean,
right.
Yeah, those again, annual recurring. I don't think they've ever been controversial. Allowing the town treasurer to borrow money from time to time for short-term needs. Those things are pretty standard. And to put them together under one omnibus, so to speak, article made perfect sense.
Now, as we're getting near the end, if somebody said, what would a Bon Tempo era look like compared to a no-free era?
What would it look like? Well, there's a couple things, and those are, I'll go through those. Those are some of the changes that I would do to run the meeting more efficiently. And the first one, and that's something that we proposed to Mike back in September. We put together a memo about having a single reading of main motions at town meeting. And that came about partly from the June annual town meeting, when the idea was to shorten up town meeting as much as possible, during the COVID pandemic. And so rewatching the tape, one of the things that I noticed and other members of the committee noticed was that Mike was having a little bit of difficulty in presenting a single reading of the motion. He wasn't sure exactly how to do it. He seemed to be a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes he would do it, and then sometimes he'd have the sponsor, read the article, the motion for the article. So I think it was Reno was looking at some tapes of various town meetings, and he saw a town meeting that used just a single reading. And also reviewing tapes, what we noticed is that in terms of reading the main motion, Mike always seemed to give the best reading of it. We look at some sponsors and they miss a word, or they change a word. So we as a committee we looked into it. There were 5 committee members that looked into it. Reno, Joe Moraes. No, he's not a committee member, I should say. Yeah, he is a committee. Joe Moraes, Brian Long, Greg Johnson, who are not members, but they're applicants, and they go to the meetings and they participate to some extent. But they don't vote or anything or make motions. But and me, we looked at 25 town meetings. We reviewed their videos to see how many of them do a single reading or twice reading of the main motions. And what we found out is that the vast majority of them do a one reading, or some of them don't even do a reading. I mean, they have it. Their tradition is they just put the motion up on a screen, and a lot of them, they get the main motions before the town meeting, so the members are aware of them, and they just go right into the discussion. So, we didn't want to go all the way to that side of the fence, so to speak. So the committee, we wrote up a memorandum. We gave it to Mike. We also sent it to Town Council Charles Body, and it was on how to present a single reading of a motion at town meeting. And that's something that was done at the remote town meeting we had in January, where at the time, Jerry, being temporary moderator, just gave a single reading. And one of the difficulties we found in the first session was that a number of people would call in and ask what was the amount. They didn't hear the amount, and that's one of the things that one of the reasons Mike gave, or why he does a twice reading of the motion, is to make sure everybody hears where it's coming from, where the money's coming from, and what the dollar amount is. And that night, I emailed Jerry, and I said to him, one of the findings that we did with the study was we found that towns that use a single reading of the main motion, they put it up on the screen, what that motion is. And if you look at the second night, that's exactly what happened. So you could see the main motion, you could see where it was coming from and what the dollar amount was. And I think after that, you didn't have anybody, raising their hand and saying what's the dollar amount. So it worked. And the committee, I don't want to go on too long, but the committee found that on average, we spend 20 minutes on each town meeting reading the motions twice. So if we do a single reading, we can cut down considerably on the amount of time that's spent reading the motions. And, it can be done accurately by one person. If we have it up on a screen, everybody can see it, and, it's easier, and it's going to be there the whole time while the discussions are happening. So if anybody wants to refer to it, it's right up there in writing.
Mike,
what?
I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Oh, we're at the end of the show, Al.
That's got a minute left.
I can't go to the other things. Oh, you're killing me. But I do thank you. Why should you vote for me? I think, tonight I presented, again, I'm passionate about town meeting. I know town meeting very well. I know its customs and traditions. I'm not planning to make any huge changes to the town meeting. All I'm looking to do is within the tradition of town meeting, making it more efficient, so that it's run better, and people can talk about the issues that are important. And I think that's why you should vote for me.
And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, we thank you for joining.
One other thing, just so people can understand, come out to vote for this election, because this is a historic election. The only contested race we've had for town moderator was back in 1947.
Well,
so it's important that people come out to vote for this. You want to be part of history, right? So come out and vote.
There you go. And as always, I'll never ask anybody to vote for a specific candidate, but I'll beg you to be informed and get out and vote.
It's important.
I don't care who you vote for, but let the town know how you feel. Pick somebody that you think is the best option for Milford, and please vote. And as always, thanks for joining. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. God bless. And we just hope that we'll see you at the polls.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Mike.
Too long since I've been home. Been running all my life.